Appraisals and appraising real property. An appraisal is a supported, defended estimate of the value of property rights as of a given date. The most common type of appraisal is looking for market value. And all market value is what the marketplace on an average is going to be willing to pay for a particular piece of property. Remember that the appraisal itself is relied on in courts and other places and has to comply to strict USPAP standards, whereas the comparative market analysis is something that real estate licensees do when serving customers. The CMA is a little bit different in that I like to call it a mini appraisal. The appraisal uses only sold properties as comps. There's a flat fee that's going to be paid to the appraiser. It's a specific dollar value that you're looking for and has to follow strict USPAP guidelines. The CMA itself uses both properties that are sold, properties that are currently listed, and properties that have expired. And what we're looking for here is a range of values. Usually performed free, but sometimes we can do it for a fee. Cost, price, and value. Cost is what it takes to create a property, and that is typically the construction cost, paying for the land, and paying for all your carrying cost. Price is what somebody's actually willing to pay for a property. And value is what we think it's worth. In other words, value is an imaginary number. And what we have to say about cost, price, and value is, although they may be similar, one does not create the other. The characteristics of value, the acronym is DUST: demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. Those create value. Some of the principles in appraising: highest and best use simply means what can we do with a property that's going to cause it to be worth the most money to us or cause it to be the most profitable. The principle of conformity simply says that property should be similar, and that helps maintain property values. Over improvements are typically incurable. A good example of an over improvement might be a swimming pool. The principle of substitution simply says that all properties are substitutable and we should never pay more for one property than anybody else might be willing to pay. It typically sets the upper limits of value. Some of the appraisal methods that we're going to be looking at, the appraiser has three. One is the comparable sales approach. And what we're doing with the comparable sales approach, we're looking at properties that are similar to the subject property. Then we're adjusting those comparables to make them like our subject. Remember Robin Hood: take from the rich, give to the poor. If the comparable is a better property, you want to subtract away from it, make it like the subject. If the comparable is inferior, you want to add to it, make it like the subject. A good example might be the subject is a 3-bedroom, the comparable is a 4-bedroom. Because the comparable is a better property with 4 bedrooms, you want to remove one of the bedrooms or whatever the cost of a bedroom is. The cost appreciation approach is simply saying that we're going to take reproduction cost of the building only and then subtract away any accrued depreciation, physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and external obsolescence. Remember, it's only the building that depreciates. We're going to add the land back in after we've come up with the value of the building after depreciation. And the most simplistic method of determining the value of the land is through the comparable sales approach. And what a lot of appraisers will say is that most of your buildings have an economic life. And then what they're going to do is look at the effective age. The effective age is how old the property looks. And so by saying that the effective age is a certain amount, that means that that's how much has depreciated. And what you're looking for is the balance left over. The types of depreciation, remember we said? Physical deterioration, which is ordinary wear and tear. Functional obsolescence, which is a design problem. For instance, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath obviously is not a very good floor plan today. And then external obsolescence simply means there's something outside the subject property that has caused the subject property to lose value. The difference between curable and incurable. Remember that anytime that you repair or add something to a home and you can make money doing it, that's curable. Anytime, however, that you repair or add something to a home and you can't get all of your money back, that's incurable. Typically speaking, paint and landscaping are curable. Swimming pools and too much over improvements of kitchens and baths can be incurable. The income capitalization approach is the last approach to value. And what we're doing here is that we're saying that income has a value. But before you can do the income capitalization approach, you've got to determine its net income. And the way that you're going to determine the net income is starting out with your potential income or potential gross income and working your way down to get to the net operating income. In the income capitalization, this is the IRV formula, I over RV. You're going to take net income, the I, and divide it by some cap rate. It's the market cap rate. And that'll give you the value to the property. My suggestion in the test is that if you see the word cap rate in your test question, think IRV, I over RV. As far as the business appraisal is concerned, the business appraisal simply is going to look at the comparable sales approach, the cost appreciation approach, and the income approach. Now, there's also going to be one fourth approach that they use for businesses only that we don't use in the others. It's called the liquidation value approach. And all we're going to be doing here is we're taking all of our assets, selling them off, paying off all of our liabilities, and whatever's left over is considered the value of the business. Leverage is OPM, other people's moolah. And it's simply borrowing money. And typically speaking, there's two ways to look at leverage. It can either be positive or negative. If you borrowed money at 6%, invested it, and could get a 12% return, that's a positive leverage. If you borrowed money at 6% and invested it and could only get a 3% return, that's a negative leverage. Now, as far as the formulas, going back to the IRV formula, here's what I need for you to remember. First of all, potential gross income. This is the maximum income that a property can possibly generate under the very best terms and conditions. And we find this through either market rent or contract rent. The next thing we're going to do is subtract away vacancy and collection losses. Those are people that are not contributing to our bills. And if it has vending machines, we want to add that in at this point. That should give us effective gross income. Effective gross income is our actual income to pay our bills. And the bills that we have to pay are considered to be operating expenses. Fixed expenses are taxes and insurance. Variable expenses are maintenance, management, and utilities. And then we set money aside to pay for things that break later. We call that reserves for replacement. Those three things are operating expenses. Please remember that your mortgage payment or your debt service is not an operating expense. That comes later. So once you subtract your operating expenses out, that gives you net operating income. It's the net income that we use in the IRV formula. Once we find net income, then we can subtract away our mortgage payment or our debt service to come up with our before-tax cash flow. Sometimes we call this cash throw-off. And that'll tell us what we're going to have before we have to pay our income taxes. Then once we calculate what our income taxes are, subtract that away, and that gives us after-tax cash flow.